What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Former featherweight 126-pound champion and super featherweight 130-pound champion Gervonta "Tank" Davis, 23-0 with 22 knockouts, is defending his new WBA regular lightweight 135-pound title against 4-division champ Leo Santa Cruz, who is also somehow defending his WBA super featherweight 130-pound title as well. Although this fight is taking place in Davis's division, lightweight 135, not at 130 where Santa Cruz holds his title. I know, weird. So this is a multi-divisional winner-takes-all bout. Although, if Davis wins, I don't see how he can ever make 130 again to defend his title. In fact, I wonder if they'll let him defend his new 130-pound title, assuming he beats Santa Cruz, and let him defend it in another lightweight 135 bout. I sure hope not, and I hope that this occasion is a one-off and not some terrible precedent. Similar scenario to when Floyd Mayweather defended both 147 and 154-pound belts versus Marcos Maidana in their rematch. But I don't think we'll ever see Tank Davis compete at 130 again. He's got more of that Adrian Broner build, not that Floyd Mayweather Zab Judah build. He just has a body that looks like it packs on the pounds quickly. Plus, it sounds like his dedication to training has already become a topic of concern, as has some other outside of the ring behavior, and he's only 25 years old. Plus, he's already missed weight multiple times. But it's actually Leo Santa Cruz who seems to be exercising the poor judgment here. Now, Santa Cruz has already had a great career since he's emerged as an elite back in 2012 with his 5-round stoppage of Eric Morel, not Eric Morales, who had the legendary fights versus Marco Antonio Barrera and Manny Pacquiao, but Eric Morel from Puerto Rico. As I mentioned, Leo Santa Cruz is a 4-division champ, and he's going for his 5th here. If he retired today, he's likely already a Hall of Famer. He had a signature win in his rematch with Carl Frampton, although both battles were super competitive. They were highly contested, action-packed. It was volume versus precision, but when the fight gets ugly and exhausting, you realize that it's not always quite that simple. Total dogfights. I really wanted either Santa Cruz or Carl Frampton to fight Gary Russell Jr. or early Vasily Lomachenko. Still hasn't happened, but that's another story. I think Leo Santa Cruz must have cashing out on his mind, and I wouldn't blame him. He should be getting paid well for this pay-per-view event. I think that this might actually be his first pay-per-view headline. Huge opportunity for Santa Cruz, but I mean, damn. So was Mikey Garcia challenging Errol Spence Jr., Kell Brook versus Gennady Golovkin, Amir Khan versus Canelo Alvarez. These are all huge opportunities, but they're also bad ideas. They don't even sound like good ideas, even when the smaller guy has success for a few rounds. When you look at Santa Cruz's decision to take on Davis at 135, keep in mind that this was once a very skinny guy, Santa Cruz we're talking here, competing at bantamweight 118 through his early career, then at super bantamweight 122 for 2 years up until 2015, when he would then go up to featherweight 126 pounds and spend his prime there. And by prime, I mean both financially and visibility-wise. He would remain there for 4 years, which included the 2 Frampton fights, which they split, and the 2 Abner Mares fights, which both went to Santa Cruz via decision. So he's definitely cooking at 126, although only 2 of the 7 wins there came via stoppage. Then he recently moves up to 130, super featherweight, and he outpaces Miguel Flores in typical Santa Cruz fashion, but you also had the feeling that this fight could have gone 20 rounds and Santa Cruz still wouldn't have gotten the stoppage. And look, this isn't any slight to Santa Cruz. He's been an elite fighter in each of these divisions, but I'm pointing to this sudden rush up the weight classes, and I'm wondering how good Santa Cruz's own team really thinks his chances are here, because he's again jumping an additional weight class after having only that one fight at 130. He's fighting Tank Davis at 135, y'all. I think that Santa Cruz, who already doesn't move his head a ton to avoid punches, I mean, he'll pull back since he's usually the taller fighter, which he will be here as well, but he'll be easy for Tank Davis to find. This isn't Jose Pedraza, who Davis did finish in the 7th, and who's going to be packing the meat on their punches between these two at 135? And will the typical Santa Cruz game plan work here and have Davis confused and overwhelmed to where he's not really letting his hands go? Guys, I'm trying to even envision it, and I can't. Will this fight even make it to the middle rounds, where Santa Cruz gets into that treadmill from hell type of flow, where it begins to drown Davis, who isn't used to this type of punch volume? See, I think Davis would be willing to let Santa Cruz outthrow him at a 2-to-1 ratio. Davis is just looking to land the hard, effective shots, where any one of those punches can be a fight changer. For old school video gamers, you've got one guy who's throwing the basic A, B, X, Y regular punches, and another who's putting some R1, L1 into those hammers and really generating some enormous energy. How does Santa Cruz deal with a bigger guy who's able to deliver speedy punches with that type of impact, who can even crouch a little lower so he could come upwards and explode into a combination, 2-3 vicious punches at a time? Now, if Santa Cruz could walk through that, then okay, maybe this additional weight gain transforms him into a prime Antonio Margarito, and his chin is durable even against the hardest of hitters, and maybe Santa Cruz's own power suddenly becomes greater and has a bigger effect on opponents than it did back at 126 and 122. I'm not expecting any of these things. Santa Cruz, at his best, was a tall featherweight who threw tons of volume for an entire 12 rounds. For runners, each round is like a fast mile time. Let's see if you could keep up through the streets and then into the hills with the incline. Santa Cruz is basically a boxing marathonist. He throws a lot with both hands, but he didn't hit terribly hard at 126, and this is 2 divisions up from that. So what's he gonna do to earn and keep Davis's respect and to keep Davis from blasting him with his crushing power in both hands? Again, Santa Cruz is not an Arislandi Lara type, where the opponent leaves the fight confused and frustrated that they couldn't land a clean glove on the guy. I mean, would you consider Leo Santa Cruz a mover? Yeah, he's a mover, alright. He'll move right up to his opponent and start letting his hands go. He always does that twitch of the wrist too. I always wondered about that for years and still don't know exactly why he does that. It might be a way of feigning a punch without having to fake it with your head or your shoulder or with your hips. Kind of an energy-saving way of feinting every few seconds to give the opponent something to think about constantly. Is he throwing a punch or is he just flicking his wrist? But the effectiveness, punch for punch, is what favors Gervonta Davis so heavily. And let me ask you this. Who do you think would win if these two were to slap box? And I'm asking that to say that the spontaneity in some of Davis's power punches isn't the type of thing that you could just eat and keep coming forward. Santa Cruz's approach is usually, hey, I'm prepared to throw close to 100 punches per round for the whole 12 rounds. Keep up. And this usually overwhelms an Abner Mares or Kiko Martinez. But what's that supposed to do versus a bigger and stronger guy who's also the quicker and harder puncher? This fight just sounds like bad news for Santa Cruz. Not only do I think that he's going to lose, but I think that there's a high likelihood of a stoppage. You've only fought once at 130, you beat a diminished Miguel Flores by decision, then you go up again, and your first fight at 135 is against arguably the hardest hitting elite fighter in the division? Yeah, I'd say Davis is the second hardest elite hitter at lightweight. I'd give the edge at number 1 to Teofimo Lopez at the moment. Davis himself is still growing into the division. He's only fought 135 once. Ryan Garcia seems to really thump as well, but you can't really consider him a divisional elite yet. We'll see how he does against Luke Campbell. But yeah, I've got Gervonta Davis winning this one via KO TKO. This would be the first stoppage of Santa Cruz, who I'm assuming believes that he could take this into deep waters and win a bunch of rounds versus a fatiguing Tank Davis. That is possible, and throwing a ton of punches does put pressure on the other guy to also throw a ton of punches out of fear of losing the round. But Davis is also showing that he carries 12 round power. He's already scored a few late knockouts and stoppages. Also worth noting, this fight is taking place at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, reportedly with some fans in attendance. There's been a long history of great battles between African American fighters and Mexican or Mexican American fighters in South Texas. Some very controversial. Most famously, you had Julio Cesar Chavez versus Pernell Whitaker in '91. More recently, you had Canelo Alvarez versus Austin Trout with that terrible policy of announcing the scorecards every 4 rounds, which totally changes the fight up in terms of the fighter's approach, knowing what the score is. And you had Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia, where Garcia had the overwhelming support of the crowd, although Spence was the native of Texas. I mean, that night, the only person pulling for Spence might have been Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys. We had Adrian Broner versus Marcos Maidana. Although Maidana's Argentinian, he's trained by super trainer Robert Garcia and was a part of that Oxnard, California camp. So you often have this astounding cultural dynamic like Ricky Hatton had with the British, and you also have a lot of people who think, uh-oh, when they hear fights at the Alamo Dome or somewhere in Texas. You know whose house it is on fight night, one of the most distinct boxing hometown advantages in America. Puerto Ricans make their presence known in certain fights in New York. Latinos come out in full force in LA, but it's not quite the same as the atmosphere down in Texas. So that'll be interesting, especially early in the fight, where I'm sure Santa Cruz being busier than the more selective Davis will make the crowd go bananas. David can't get caught up though in wanting to shut the crowd up by matching Santa Cruz's output. He just needs to focus on shutting Santa Cruz down and finding his opportunities to split Santa Cruz's high guard with straight punches or a left hook around the guard and on the ear. I can't wait to see how this one plays out. Right now, Santa Cruz is listed as a 2.5 to 1 underdog, which in a sense sounds right, as great as Santa Cruz is, but I'd still be tempted to bet on Davis even with those odds, because I think that once this fight starts, it'll be evident that Davis should be an even greater favorite than the almost 3 to 1 that he is now. Bad matchup for Santa Cruz, especially in a divisional debut. But let me know your thoughts about this fight and about Santa Cruz's place in the 135-pound division. I'm actually expecting him, or maybe I'm just hoping, that he goes back down to 130, unless the goal was to only fight a couple mega fights like this, or versus a Lomachenko, Teofimo, Devin Haney, etc. I don't know. 135 could be bad for Santa Cruz's health. Also, let me know where you think Davis, who's a relative newcomer himself in this division, stacks up against the other 135 lightweight elite. Please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.